We'll give everyone just another 30 seconds or so. Hey, Leslie. Okay. Well, one or two more folks might pop in, but part of the intent of this smaller space is that we can be a little less formal. So we can unmute and discuss. We have several staff with the Department of Transportation Infrastructure, as well as on the consultant team in the room, so that we can answer your questions about what the proposed concept designs are showing and what we may have missed, what your thoughts are, that kind of thing. So I think we'll be pretty informal here. If you have a burning question or comment, go ahead and unmute. And if we start talking over each other, we can consider it a little more org.
If no one else will go, I'll go first.
Leslie.
I live and work in this area that you're talking about. First, I'd like to say that for the first meeting, we had I'm glad that you guys used the feedback from the first meeting into this one, because this presentation was really well done and explained a lot of things that I had questions about. But I did have a question about, you mentioned you were keeping the parking lanes from Hudson to Holly, but once you crossed Holly, what will the parking lanes look like, if at all, will there be any?
Right. So I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Adam to go into more detail. But on 35th specifically, to accommodate the bike lane, I think they mentioned that the width of the road changes at that cross section they showed you. So in that narrower cross section, they will be repurposing in this design both of the on-street parking lanes, and they will be repurposed as the bike lanes. So you won't have on-street parking for that segment. Adam,
which segment that won't have the parking? 35th, but from where to where?
I guess we should bring up the map. Would be a little easier. Do you have that? Adam, do you have?
I do not. I can get it up here pretty quick though.
I
Okay.
can pull it up, Dana. I have the PowerPoint.
Yeah, it'll be easier to talk through. Yeah, if we have the cross section and then the locations.
Just give me a second. It might take a moment to load. So if there's other questions.
If I add a question here in the chat, is it just going to go to this group? Because I want it just to go to this group. Yes. Or will it go to everyone?
I think it's just here.
Okay, thank you.
I'm pretty sure it's but this whole thing's being recorded, and it might be public later. Just, you know.
We will be noting down, yeah, all the comments, but I think the comment, if you put it in now, we'll just see it right now. Also, Leslie, if you want to send a direct message to one of us, you are able to do that, or you can email after if that's more comfortable for you. How are we doing, Carolyn?
It's a huge file, so it's taking a hot second. I thought I had it downloaded already, but it disappeared.
All right. Well, I bet Adam or I could race you to it until you get that up. We can bring up just Google Maps and share so we can show which sections more easily.
I mean, I think I got it now that you said. I just didn't hear before. But from Holly to Quebec is where that's the section you're talking about, that where the parking would be repurposed for bike lanes. Yeah, we live on Leiden, just north of 35th in that section. I'm just happy that street safety is being prioritized. I think that 35th along there can be really fast. I go running along 35th towards Colorado from here quite a bit, over towards the old golf course. And because there isn't really a sidewalk, it's, and cars drive very fast, it can be a little scary sometimes. So, or seeming dangerous. Sorry, our very young son is here.
I just joined.
And so I'm glad that street safety is a part of it, and that slowing down cars, getting to follow the speed limit is part of it.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. We usually find that by narrowing the street down, it does help cue cars to go more slowly. So it should be helpful from that standpoint. And David ran through this pretty quick, but there are a couple locations where we're also going to be doing sort of markings on the street, and an intersection we'll be adding clear crosswalks as well. So all that should be helpful. Leslie, you had a really great question there about Skyland Park, and that there's a lot of use on the weekends, right? Like people are getting in and out, they're parking, they're dropping folks off. That's really helpful for us to know. We know that park does get quite a bit of use, but we can look into that a little bit more. Typically, what we find is that the more that we clearly designate the space for each of the users, the safer it is. But we can also continue to look at those locations. Sometimes we'll add additional signage at, say, a park where there's a lot of usage, to remind all the users, the bicyclists, to know that there's going to be a lot more folks crossing the streets, or for vehicles as a reminder that they're there. So we'll add more signage or on-street sort of symbols. Adam, do you have anything to add to that when we're thinking about high use areas by many types of users?
Yeah, it's something we can look into with our design, whether that's, do we need to provide an area for loading for the park, or do we need to look into, providing some additional protection for cyclists near the park, whether that's some kind of buffer, things like that. That's things we can look into as we move further into the design. When we're designing these corridors, we are looking at some of these land uses like the parks, schools, things nearby, and take that into account as we move along with our design. And it's a great catch at this meeting to bring it to our attention.
Dana, can you see my screen? Now, I don't know, it might be too little too late, but I did find it.
Yeah, I was thinking we could just go back to the two cross sections. I think Ben has a good idea of where we're talking about, but just, yeah, to help understand what's driving the design to some extent here is just the widths. So it's Dahlia to Hudson, and then Holly to Quebec. So it's that narrower section that we have to have a little bit of that trade-off. And then sort of for the wider section, we're able to accommodate both. Are there other thoughts or things that you experience on the street that we should keep in mind? Obviously, we've done, data collection and analysis, but we need the eyes on the street to help us make sure we're not missing anything in this design. All right, well, it sounds like at least we've covered most of yours questions, just great. We will report back to the main room and share some of these comments and questions and do a wrap up. But I also don't want to keep you guys from your evening. There's not going to be a lot of additional substantive, like we're not going to be sharing additional information at the end of the meeting. So feel free to jump off and continue your evening if you'd like. But that's sort of the plan, is that we'll be in here for a couple more minutes. If we have more thoughts about what the two corridors need, or what we're missing in the plan design, or what the schedule is. And then at the end, we'll just go back into that group and debrief just a little bit. But there's not a lot of content that you would be missing.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Can you show again the map for Dahlia, specifically on Dahlia from about
35th to 38th?
Yes, please. And the cross section of what it look like when it's all done.
Is it this one?
No, it'd be Dahlia Street, the residential one.
Okay, a couple more slides, I think.
Nope.
Yes. That would
If you keep going, it'll show what we're proposing, I think, right?
Yes. I think it'd be.
Do we pass it?
You need me to go forward or backwards? I'm trying to remember where it was. You said Dahlia, right?
Yeah. Well,
That's 35th. Hang on. Yeah, here's the start of Dahlia. So
okay. I think that was it, right?
One more up, sorry.
You just missed it.
or further back.
I think we just missed it, like 2 slides back.
There we go. That's it.
Yeah, so it's slightly different on different parts of the corridor.
Yep. So from 35th to 38th, we maintain the parking. The parking is removed from on 38th from Dahlia to Elm, and then we maintain the parking again north of 38th on Elm Street from 38th to 39th.
So they continue on our block, but then
We could toggle between the map and this, but essentially when it turns to east-west for that small segment, curves around on 38th to get to Elm. That's the small segment. Yeah, there you go. That map right there. You were just there, Carolyn. Yep. So the first cross section is also the areas that are in green. And then the second cross section, which essentially repurposes the parking in that case, is on that just 2 block section of 38th.
Is there any discussion of having like a stop sign or anything around 36th and Dahlia, where that's where cars tend to speed up quite a bit on Dahlia from what I've noticed? I live on the corner of 36th and Dahlia. So just wondering if a stop sign there has been discussed at all.
Yeah, are you saying vehicles traveling north start to pick up speed there?
so it's basically 2 blocks with no stop sign, and then there's a police station up the block. People get, you know, full ramming speed going down that block, and then they slam on the brakes when they get to the turn, or they slam on the brakes when they get by the park. But I
Okay.
think a bike lane's gonna slow them down. They'll slow them down as an actual stop sign there, just because that's you have basically 2 blocks where you can just pick up full speed and everyone, including law enforcement, max it out on that little 2-way strip.
Ah, well, it's unfortunate to hear law enforcement is doing that. So in general, stop signs specifically aren't used to help slow traffic. So we wouldn't consider a stop sign for that reason. And that's basically what you just described is what we find from studies is that when you put in a stop sign, people will slam their brakes on a stop and then they, put on the speed again right after the stop sign. So they're not really effective for speeding issues, but we do find that like visually narrowing the road can help with speeding. So we think the bike lane itself should help with that. But there are other additional things that we can do to remind folks of the speed limits. So it's good to know that this segment is where a lot of folks are doing that speeding. One of the things that Adam and the design team might consider is adding more speed limit signs. In some cases, we'll add a driver feedback sign. And then in some cases, we might narrow the vehicle travel lane more than you would normally to help remind people to travel at appropriate speeds. So it's good to know this section is a little problematic, especially from speeding. We don't think a stop sign is typically what we would use, but we'll look at some of the other treatments that we do use to help with the speeding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me note that down here.
One more question. I know it's not part of the plan. So I'm gonna say that again. I know it's not part of the plan, but one of the other big issues is actually when you get past 35th and Dahlia, there's no sidewalk basically. A lot of people go into that golf course. We actually can't take our stroller that way anymore because there's so many broken bottles. No sidewalk. I know it's not part of this, but is that something they could look at? I believe that golf course is gonna stay around in some form or another. It'll be really helpful if there was actually past that, at the very least, a sidewalk that people could walk on. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah, I hear you guys. So David mentioned, so because, yeah, you know it's not part of this project because this project is really being only executed through the paving program. So it's just behind the curb. But 35th is definitely on my radar and working with our sidewalk gap program. And that's a pot of money and it comes from the bond program that was passed, 3 years ago now, that we have a pot of funds to go through and address where these sidewalk gaps exist. 35th has a couple different considerations. So we're looking at some of those easier segments being in the next round that we work to design. Adjacent to the golf course, we are kind of holding to see where the community ends up and what they want of that. If it is redeveloped in any sense, they might be on the developer to actually put in a fully accessible sidewalk along that whole section. If it isn't and it's an easement, then the city knows that that's something that we'll have to add back into our program. So I know that's not a solid answer for you, but I am aware that this is a pretty high priority sidewalk gap for the community, and that some sections are probably on the faster track. We don't usually have a super fast track for the city, but a faster track in the next couple of years to be designed and put in. And then some segments are a little bit on hold, but are also on the list. So I hope that helps answer your question. Keep telling us about it. We want to make sure we're prioritizing the right segments. We have sort of a set of criteria we look at, but we also want to hear where people are walking and where it's really important for you to get around.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
I had a sort of another comment about 35th there. We were talking about slowing cars down and being safe. I think that one thing that could help, oh, we're ending here. Well, I'll just say this real quick. One thing that could help about taking away the parking is that one of the unsafe things that happens there is people pull out of the alleyways really fast. And I feel like if I'm walking and they can't see really because the cars are parked right up against the alleyway. So
Yeah.
something that comes to mind about what could be helpful, because I mean, I don't know how you stop people from pulling out of the alleys fast, but if they could see better, that would be good.
Yeah, we can talk more if I get cut off after the breakout room, but typically we look at the sight triangle is what we call it, to make sure that there's nothing impeding the view of folks as they come out of alleys or out into intersections. So sometimes parked cars do block, and sometimes it's foliage. If there are particular blocks where you're seeing that, it would be really helpful for us, but it's also just good to know in general that that's happening.
Okay, I'll look. I think I got 3 seconds. I'll look at the email and